Before we get very far into our next story, we do have a warning for you tonight. What you're about to see and hear may not be suitable for children. Tonight, take a walk in their world.
Transpicuous news, connecting the dots between the lines. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous News. It has been a frolicsome week. New Year's come and went, and now we're going to take a look at what was slipped into the news while everyone was very, very distracted this week. And distraction is one of the main things that we're going to look at. What are they doing to distract the public? And more importantly, what are they distracting the public from? So let's get started. First up, because you know, I always got to start with the medical stuff, and it never ceases to amaze me, the endless supply of material they come up with. With 15 children dead, the CDC is declaring a flu epidemic. It's just terrible, a flu epidemic. 15 children have died, which is always horrible. And yet, the fact that they're calling it an epidemic is so ludicrous as to be beyond what we can possibly fathom. But the best part of the article is the very last line that says, although the current vaccine does not seem to be a good match for this year's flu strain virus, it makes sense to get the flu shot, especially if you're in a high-risk group, you know, like children under the age of 4 and pregnant women and the elderly with health complications, you know, the ones that they've never tested the flu vaccine on. Yes, you should go out and inject yourself with toxins that don't work anyway. And they're admitting it this year, which is highly funny. And, you know, if the flu doesn't scare you, I giggled so hard. A new virus unlike anything ever seen before. It's called the bourbon virus, named after a guy, named after where it was found, which was in Bourbon County. The symptoms include fever and fatigue, similar to tick-borne diseases. They've sent samples off to the CDC. The final line here says, this was the first known instance and the only confirmed case. Yet it's all over the news. It's a virus unlike anything we've seen before. Be afraid. Be really, really afraid. Okay, and got to talk about Ebola. Come on, we have to talk about Ebola. This article came out October 5th. And when it came out, I literally was just, oh, seriously. But I took my little screenshots, as I do, and put it off to the side because I knew it was going to come back into play. Ebola is an ISIS bioweapon. And the article talks about the fact that, you know, that these groups could simply use human carriers to intentionally infect themselves, because people do that, in West Africa, and then spread the deadly virus through the world's air transportation systems. This is what we call a setup article. I am laughing, okay? This is that whole, okay, well, Ebola's not working by itself, and it doesn't seem like we're able to really sell the whole ISIS terrorist thing. So maybe if we combine the two, then maybe we'll be able to use that. Lo and behold, this week, Iraq media says ISIS militants have contracted Ebola. Followed immediately the next day with officials refute the Iraqi media reports that ISIS members have contracted Ebola, because they have no way of testing for it now. So, you know, mainstream media, no one seems to know what's going on. Very, very funny. But yes, watch this. They've just played it out. It's going to be pulled back. They're going to watch how the public reacted to it. Did they buy it? Did they panic? Can we use this? If not, they'll come up with something else. and I'm sure it'll be very visible. I love these. You have the Curiosity rover on Mars, and you have people who spend all this time looking through the pictures that they can find online. They found a coffin on Mars, apparently. It's quite humorous. Not only a coffin, they also found Obama's head. Who'd have thunk? I'm sorry, just far too funny for words. And apparently, if you want to have the prefix "Sir" added to your name, all you have to do is come up with a way to give Prince Philip a stiffy, and the Queen will knight you. That's all I need to say about that article. This came up a couple days ago. I literally sat there going, I love transparency, but there are times when some of these politicians are just so outrageously transparent that you just, wow. Oklahoma State Senator Don Barrington proposes a law to ban hoodies in public. And also, apparently has stated that he will not hear SB 2116, which is marijuana legalization, because his church wouldn't approve, which leads to the question, as below, why is his church running the state? Inquiring minds want to know, really? You're not going to vote on something because your church doesn't like it? So, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to last week's reports. We're going to look at the distractions. Okay? Follow us through on this. Let's see where this goes, because there's a lot of distraction being played out right now. AirAsia, the plane crash. Okay? So, following it through from last week's report to now, okay? December 30th, they located supposedly plane wreckage. Now, I am not an aeronautics expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm pretty sure that even the Wright brothers figured out that wood is not the best material to build airplanes from. So you gotta wonder why plane wreckage has got pieces of wood, and they're calling it plane wreckage. Oh, and the article also said 40 bodies have been recovered from the missing AirAsia flight, December 30th. December 31st, sonar may have detected the wreckage from AirAsia. Except, again, we have this, no one knows what they're talking about. One search official told CNN that he believes sonar equipment has detected the wreckage from the plane at the bottom of the sea, yet Indonesia's search and rescue chief has said that the aircraft hasn't been recovered, has not been seen yet. Oh, and they've only found 7 bodies. 7. I will also say this, I went looking, there's only been, to the best of my knowledge, at least as of 2 days ago, 1 body that the pictures were actually released on the internet, and I'm not really convinced that it wasn't a dummy. Sorry. Seriously. And I'm not going to even show the picture because it's kind of morbid. But you can, all you have to do is go do a Google search on it. You'll find the picture and you'll see it and go, really? I'm not so sure about this. Now, everyone talks about the black box. I love this because with this lovely picture here, look, we've got here, this is the underwater location beacon and the crash survivable memory unit. Isn't it funny how they can never find these things? Really? I mean, how many missing airplanes? They just can't seem to find them. Maybe someone needs to take a look at their, crash survivable memory units and their underwater location beacons. Just saying. So, 2 days ago, they announced that they have found some big objects in the sea, in this area where they're searching. I find it kind of humorous. It says specialist equipment has arrived to search for the plane's black box flight recorders. but no signals have been picked up yet. But the special equipment just arrived. It's been a week, over a week. In another development, it has emerged like this. In another development, it has emerged that AirAsia did not have official permission to fly the Surabaya to Singapore route on Sunday, but was licensed for 4 other days of the week. Now, I talk about this quite often, that when you read an article, sometimes you'll find a sentence that just doesn't fit in. There's a piece put in the article that is unusual, just doesn't seem to really matter. And those are the sentences that I watch very closely, because when they put these plants in, there's always a reason for it. So this was one of those sentences that jumped out at me. It was like, what are they trying to say? Oh, and here we go. The British man who was on board, who turned out to be a managing director of Alstom Power, and then of course we uncovered last week that Alstom had just been sued for over $900 million for bribery and fraud. 2 days after that was announced, it's announced that Alstrom's energy business is being sold to General Electric. Isn't that interesting? I find that very, very interesting. Now, at the exact same time last week that we talked about the AirAsia plane crash, we talked about the ferry fire. Happened the exact same day. In the Mediterranean, a ferry with, I believe, 478 people on board catches on fire. Okay, it took them 2 days to get all the people off this ferry, number one. 2 days. Big, huge hoo-hurrah. Oh, look, it's terrible. All these horrible things happening. They finally got everyone off. 12 confirmed dead, 41 people unaccounted for. And they're not sure if perhaps it was just, the passenger manifest was off. Okay. Oh, and don't forget, we also had, at the same time, the Turkish freighter that crashed the same day as well. Okay? So, one has to wonder, well, guess what? 2 days later, the Italian Coast Guard rescues almost 1,000 migrants, most of them Syrian refugees, off a transport ship that has been basically jury-rigged to crash right directly into the Italian coast. 1,000 refugees. So they managed to get on board and they take over control, and they managed to stop the boat. I think it was like 5 kilometers off the coast of Italy before it crashed into Italy. So everyone's just like, oh, this was the second maritime drama of recent days. Actually, the third one. But it gets better, because 2 days later, they have another boat. It's the exact same thing again. 2 days later, we have another boat, this one with over 400 refugees on board. Exact same thing. Whoever was running the boat, and they're calling them human traffickers, which I don't necessarily believe, but they've obviously abandoned ship and jumped off and left the boat, so it's going to crash right into the Italian coast. 2 days. Almost 1,500 refugees, migrants. Burning ferry, crashing Turkish freighter, airplanes dropping out of the sky. And we talk about distractions. We talk about the media plays the distraction game. And you have to wonder, what are they distracting from? Now, the most popular, if you will, distraction that really worked for them was, of course, Air Malaysia last year. Air Malaysia kept the public completely distracted for weeks. And we had the 2 ferry crashes, the one into Italy, again, and the one in South Korea. Again, huge, generated a lot of media stir. People were focused on it. not looking at other things, and we have all this stuff going on. What stuff is going on? What's going on? Especially, let's take a look at the Mediterranean. What's going on? Well, we have the whole thing that I talked about last week with Greece. Now, this whole Greece story is really blowing up huge, and people don't understand the ramifications of this, right? We have this article that came out on December 31st. Basically, an ally of Merkel saying the Eurozone is no longer obliged to rescue Greece. The guy said, the times that we had to rescue Greece are over. There's no potential for political blackmail anymore. Greece is no longer of systemic importance for the EU. Really? This is just the day after the Greek Prime Minister dissolves Parliament. They tried to vote on a new president 3 times, and they couldn't vote on a new president. So you dissolve Parliament, and now they're having snap elections. Followed by more articles coming out. Greece political crisis might force it out of the euro. Well, one of the reasons why is the political party, which is the radical leftist coalition called Syriza, and I'm sorry about pronunciation, which it looks like they're the ones who will win this election. Yeah, they're basically saying that they're going to write off the debt and say, yeah, no, we're not going to pay these debts, and yeah, we don't really like your austerity shit anymore. And a lot of people are like, oh, they can say what they want, blah, blah, blah. They'll be forced to, I don't know, toe the line. What people don't get is, and this was actually kind of an interesting write-up, and again, as usual, the links will be down below. At worst, the Greek exit would now mean all hopes of the ECB quantitative easing, i.e. printing money out of thin air, would be put on indefinite hiatus until the legal framework for not only funding sovereign deficits but also monetizing bonds from an imploding Eurozone is justified. It also means that the peripheral bonds, which have been priced well over 100% of the European quantitative easing, would go bidless overnight, leading to market crashes across the continent, bank runs, and ultimately leading to a full-blown European depression. Bank runs. Flip back to the last one. Oh, look at this. Greek bank deposit outflows grow as poll looms. So, in English, bank deposit outflows is the media's politically correct way of saying bank run. Oh, they've got a bank run in Greece. Can't imagine how that happened. So, you've got a lot of stuff going on. Now, Greece is kind of starting to get the media attention as they've had to start talking about this. What we don't have is the coverage that Portugal and Spain are in the exact same position. Maybe not quite as steeply, but they are right smack behind Greece. So, what are they trying to distract us from? Is it perhaps this? This is Greece, December 2014. This is also Greece, December 2014. This is Spain, December 2014. This is also Spain, this December. Portugal. Italy. Is that what they're trying to distract the public from? Distract, distract, distract. Oh, and the Ukraine, of course. Distract, distract, distract. Oh, and other news in the EU, Lithuania just joined the Eurozone despite the fact that 40% of the population was totally against it. And that's 40% that they admit to. That's not the real numbers. It's probably higher, like more like 80% said, I don't think so. Good luck with that, boys. You're gonna need it. Seriously, watch the distractions. They're pulling out all the stops to keep everyone very, very distracted right now. Going to get into the rest of the news This is interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of transparency coming out in the news right now. Al-Qaeda terrorist suspect dies days before his trial in New York. This guy was slated to go on trial in New York on charges of helping plan the 1998 bombings outside U.S. embassies in Tanzania and in Kenya. Outside the embassies. He was diagnosed with advanced liver cancer after U.S. commandos and FBI agents captured him outside his home in Libya in 2013. His attorney says his client's condition had deteriorated significantly in the last month, and he died in a New York hospital a few days ago. Okay, first off, if the bombings happened outside the embassies, then they weren't on American soil. So why is the guy being tried in New York for bombings that took place in Tanzania and Kenya? First question. Second question, really? Gets liver cancer after they arrest him? Oh, and by the way, he apparently was very vocal in the fact that he's not guilty, and this has all been a setup. Remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about the fact that the Federal Reserve was ordering emergency preparedness kits for all its banks. Well, apparently they're now hiring an emergency preparedness specialist familiar with the Department of Homeland Security directives. I wonder what's going on. I wonder what these guys are up to. A Czech veteran returns his NATO medals, saying that he returned his medals that he received for his role in international peacekeeping missions, as he was deeply ashamed of having served in the organization led by the U.S. with its monstrous interests around the world. Lots of fingers getting pointed right now. Now, here's a little story. We've been kind of talking on this for a few months now. And I want everyone to keep their eye on this because little pieces keep coming out. Bitcoin would help in transition towards a cashless society, says India's central bank chief. Cashless society. Following this one, now Russia has been one of the most vocal countries to try and ban Bitcoin. Well, on December 27th, the Russian Economic Development Ministry rejected the Finance Ministry Bitcoin ban bill. Rejected it. Now they're getting all kinds of stuff about, well, it would be a problem with gift cards and, bonus points, which is ludicrous. But Russia did a turnaround. Is China next? And what does that mean? When we're talking about electronic currencies, e-currencies, kind of like fiat e-currencies that appear on bank screens. Gotta wonder what this means. Let's follow this. Here's a story, has had almost zero coverage in the news. Zero. And I just sit there and go, everyone look over there, everyone look over here, look at all these other things. For 2 weeks now, Libya has been on fire. The oil tankers are on fire. They've been burning for 2 weeks. Now, I do like this little entry into the article that says more than 3 years after dictator Gaddafi was toppled and killed in a NATO-backed revolt, Libya is awash with weapons and powerful militias and has rival parliaments as well as governments. Thanks, guys. You did a great job helping out the Libyans by going in there and making a massive shit. Anyways, this has burned for 2 weeks now. 1.8 million barrels of oil has burned so far. No one in the media is talking about it. This is ongoing. This is like they've just bombed the official, I'm not sure how that means, the official Libyan government, whichever one that one is, just did airstrikes against the militias that were bombing these. Really? And no one's talking about this. And no one's talking about the implication of what this has on the price of oil. I wonder. Now, more finger pointing. This is awesome. So, the U.S. pretends to be fighting against ISIL. A senior Iranian diplomat says the United States pretends to be fighting the ISIL as a trick to advance its policies in the Middle East region, which was followed the next day by an Iraqi commander saying U.S.-led coalition aircraft aiding ISIL. Basically he's saying they're dropping them weapons to U.S. Right. And you can't really call it collusion. It's Iran and Iraq who hate each other. It's not like they're colluding on this story. Oh, too funny. And more finger pointing. I love this. Oliver Stone apparently is doing a documentary and is stating that the CIA fingerprints are all over the Kiev massacre. So we'll be looking forward to seeing that documentary, see what kind of spin goes on in there. But yeah, let's talk about pointing fingers at the United States. They're just really on everyone's shit list at the moment. Last week I covered the prequel, if you will, to this. Of course, we had the U.S. Senator telling Netanyahu that, we're going to support you. We're not going to let Palestine become a state. Palestinian statehood bid was submitted to the United Nations, December 30th. Followed immediately by Palestinians postponed the UN statehood bid. One of the things said in here is that some sources have said the Palestinians are holding off after unexpected opposition came from the American administration and Western European members of the Security Council. Is that funny? Funny how these things just play out. So instead, 2 days later, Palestinians submit documents to join the International Criminal Courts in The Hague. Followed directly 2 days after that with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying they're going to file their own war crimes suit in foreign courts against the top Palestinian officials and freeze the transfer of monthly tax revenues to Palestine in response to its application to the ICC. Yes, sometimes you just get to the point where you're just speechless. I love the fact that he says, however, he didn't specify where and when the legal proceedings against the Palestinian leadership would be launched. Come on, folks. It's too funny. Saudi Arabia beheads its 87th person this year. At least 87 people have been executed in Saudi Arabia this year. The kingdom applies the death penalty for a large number of crimes, including drug offenses, apostasy, sorcery, and witchcraft. Now, I'm putting this in here, and I know people aren't going to like it when I say this, but, this is a country who's supposed to be working with the United States to take down ISIS. Those terrorists who've been beheading people. Just saying. And it looks like you don't need to have money to invest in gold or silver because coffee is the new black gold. I thought this was quite cute, talking about the fact of oil is plummeting, gold and silver are just a mess, but you could buy coffee. It's apparently a really good investment right now. Maybe they'll make it part of the Basel III. Never mind. Shanghai tops the world's major stock markets in 2014. This is big news. Again, it's really funny how it's been very quiet. Very quiet. Shanghai's stock market jumped by 58% in 2014, and most of that is in the last 6 weeks. Followed closely by Argentina's stock market, which jumped, I believe, 56%. Isn't it funny how no one's talking about those stock markets? And of course, you know, at the end of the year, they always got to run these articles. World's 400 richest get richer, adding $92 billion in 2014. Now, what's interesting is this is mostly focused on a Chinese guy named Jack Ma, who is the founder of Alibaba Group. Apparently, he added $25 billion to his wealth since September. With the IPO of Alibaba, which was huge news in September. Yeah, interesting. Gotta wonder about where these numbers are going to lead to. This, again, alternative media is pushing this because this comes up about once every 6 to 8 months. Federal Reserve audit is gains momentum in the Senate because they've been pushing for, you know, former Republican Ron Paul, he started this years ago. The push, audit the Fed. Needs a full audit. We deserve to know. I hate to tell this to people who keep pushing this one. It's not going to happen. They will never transparently audit the Fed. They can't. They cannot. So while it's lovely to say that, oh yes, it's getting more support, this bill to audit the Fed, it doesn't matter because even if they do audit the Fed, it'll all be bullshit anyway. You are never going to get the details of what's been done by the Federal Reserve, what they own, where the money has been and gone, until they are just a crumbling ruin, pretty much. This was another sad moment of the U.S. debt soars by $100 billion on the last day of 2014. U.S. debt soared by $98 billion in one day. One day. Here's the numbers. I went to the Treasury Department itself and looked up the numbers. There it is right there. $98 billion, one day. I wonder how that works into the budget thingy they got going on. They're going to point some more fingers at the Americans again. It's so much fun, especially with Obama in power. Sony cyber attack. North Korea faces new sanctions. On Friday, Obama signed, he must be really getting tired. His wrist must be awfully sore from all these signatures. Obama signed new sanctions against North Korea. Interesting, though. Little piece. And then, like I said, always look for the little sentence that catches you. But Friday's actions are believed to be the first time the U.S. has moved to punish any country for cyber attacks on a U.S. company. U.S. company? Sony? Pretty sure Sony belongs to Japan. Oh, look at this. Sony Corporation, corporate headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. This makes Sony one of the most comprehensive entertainment companies in the world. Sony's principal business operations include Sony Corporation, Sony Pictures, Sony Computer, Sony Music, Sony Mobile Communications, and Sony Financial. And they're all based, they're all based in Tokyo, and it's a Japan-based corporate group. It's that Sony group. It's Japanese. It's not American. It's not American at all. So one has to ask themselves, somebody hacks a Japanese corporation, the U.S. calls it a matter of national security, and then slaps sanctions on another sovereign nation. And this doesn't ring bells for anyone? I'm telling you. Very, very interesting. And of course, now, apparently came out today that North Korea is pissed. I can't imagine why. Can't imagine why. Now, this is a story I've been personally following the story of the F-35 fighter jets since 2010, because that's when the Canadian government decided they'd buy 65 of the things that cost more than what it would take to feed several small nations for several years, right? And it's been a fiasco. I don't know, the Canadians out there, they're all shaking their heads right now going, oh yes, the F-35, we know all about this. This plane has been a wrecking ball from the beginning. If you follow the history of this, as it's especially the last 4 years of it, it is asinine. Okay, well now, computer glitch prevents the US's most advanced F-35 fighter from firing until 2019. A computer glitch? It's going to take them 4 years to fix a computer glitch. Yeah, okay. Of course, the very next day, another article comes out basically saying the software disaster that Pentagon never even planned for the F-35 to be able to shoot a gun until 2019. Apparently, the software is so overly complex, so ridiculous, that it's pretty much unfixable. So all these countries that have lined up to pay out money to buy fighter jets that are, you know, the best of the best, things don't even work 5 years later. And they're now saying it's going to be another 4 years. Insane. Insane. This is important. This is one of those ones where, like I talk about, where I have things that come up for me, even if I'm not going to report on them in the moment, I screenshot them, put them off to the side, because you never know when you're going to want to refer back to these stories. Erasing memories and landing on a comet, how science rocked 2014. This was a special in RT. One little piece we want to focus on. In California, researchers managed to erase, then restore lost memory in genetically modified rats with a flash of light. Having learned to selectively affect brain neurons, influencing memory. Really? So let's do a little review of some of the articles I've been screenshotting for the past year. I think you'll find some of these very interesting. April 1st, 2014, new biotech office to integrate biology into national defense. DARPA has announced the creation of a new biological technologies office to explore the power of biological systems. The office seeks to integrate disciplines such as computer science, microsystems, sensor design, neuroscience, saying that biology is one of the core sciences in defense technology's future. Yeah, just wait. So then we have a series of articles that started between May and October. The military is building brain chips to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. It's developing an innovative brain chip to treat post-traumatic stress disorder in soldiers and veterans that could bring sweeping new changes to the way depression and anxiety is treated for millions of Americans. Military funds brain, computer interfaces to control feelings, to develop brain implants to help regulate emotions for the mentally ill. The first human brain-to-brain interface has been created. In the future, will we all be linked telepathically? This one is proven. They've already done this one. Pentagon's DARPA works on reading brains in real time. The DARPA project is investing $70 million to develop a new implant that can track and respond to brain signals in real time. Inner voices. U.S. scientists spy on human minds with a brain decoder. Keeping your thoughts strictly to yourself may prove infeasible, with scientists working on breakthrough mind-reading device. Really, in fact, it's all about hearing inner voices and correctly interpreting them with the help of unique individual decoders. Yeah. Now, we have talked mainstream media does spins these stories, and of course we have all the false flag events, and we have all these things that happen. And we have touched around the edges here and there, and I know many people in the alternative media have talked about mind control and talked about the various things that have been used to cause things to happen, to cause people to go berserk and go on shooting sprees, etc., etc. And I'm going to point out one more application to this, and I know that I'm going to probably make some people kind of pissed off with this one, but there is another aspect to this that I think a lot of people may not really be looking at, and that is in the implanting of thoughts into a human brain. What's the one area where we see so many people talking about communications that they receive psychically? So, channeled messages. And immediately brings to mind what happened to Greg Giles back a few years ago, if anyone followed him. There have been a lot of these instances coming out recently where people are starting to figure out that these channeled messages may not really be coming from who they're supposed to be coming from. And you can guarantee that if the mainstream media is running with these news stories, that this is not new technology. You can guarantee they've been using this for a long time now, if it's coming out mainstream. Just a thought. Our final story for today, we talked last week about the Russian ruble crashing, and we've talked about the oil and all of this, and whether Russia's buying gold and silver, and of course Western mainstream media is really playing the anti-Russia propaganda and how, oh, they're crippled and the ruble is doing so badly, and oh my God, you know, Russia's falling and all the rest of it. And then I found this article, and here's one. No one has covered this. No one. Not even alternative media, Zero Hedge, RT, places, people who normally are really good at picking up on this. No one has covered this little piece. Grandmaster Putin, Russia earns $20 billion and recovers the stocks of its companies. Now this is good. Prior to all of this, part of the stocks of Russia's energetic companies belonged to foreign investors, Americans and Europeans, which means that almost half of all the profit from oil and gas companies went not to Russia, but to these foreign investors. So basically, the long and short of it is the ruble fell. Everyone went, oh no, what are we going to do? And very quietly, when the ruble fell, everything crashed, all the investors wanted to leave. When all the prices in these stocks, in these energy companies went way down, Putin swooped in, bought them all up. Now all Russia's energy companies are now owned solely by Russia. And they made $20 billion out of the deal. And guess what? The ruble's right back to where it was months ago. So, really, Russia's not all that bad off. Now, what's also interesting is I went back and looked at another article I'd read on the 25th. This article here was December 30th. It was talking about how the ruble rallies 34% after Russia's big interventions. Doesn't really go into what the interventions were, but Russia burned through $15.7 billion of its reserves the week ending December 19th. I suspect that they used that $15.7 billion in reserves to buy up all their stocks at bargain basement price, and then turned around and made $20 billion off of it. So really, the ruble's soaring, Russia's kind of, you know, ha 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 ha. And yeah, that's where we end this week's news coverage of all that's been happening in the world. And yeah, my friends, it's been interesting. They're pulling out a lot of distractions right now. There is a lot of stuff going on in the financial aspects politically that they really don't want the general public knowing about. So watch for the distractions and keep your eye on Putin giggling in the corner, because apparently he's finding this to be a complete riot. And that is it for Transpicuous News this week, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back again, same time, same place, next week.
Transpicuous News, connecting the dots between the lines.